Hello, I'm Faiz Rahman and you're watching Cafe DC. Our guest today is Deputy to the Special Representative of the Office of AFPAC, which is Afghan Pakistan Office at the State Department, Mr. Dan Feldman. We're going to talk to him about these peace talks which are about to start in Pakistan between Taliban and the government of Pakistan, as well as a few issues, Washington Post story about the drone strikes, and a few more topics. Mr. Feldman, thank you very much for joining us today. Let's get this Washington Post story out of the way first.
Okay.
Let's start with that. Drone strikes, it's a big issue in Pakistan. When the last time, according to the Pakistan government's position, when the last time the talks were about to start, there was a drone attack and Taliban's leader was killed, Hakimullah Masood was killed. But this time around, the talks are getting into a very serious mode, so to speak. Both parties, the government as well as the Taliban, they have announced their committees, even though they're committees not exactly representing these two entities, but still. And now you have this Washington Post story saying the Americans are curtailing the drone strike just to help the Pakistanis to come up with a framework and not to disturb the water, so to speak. So what's your comment? Do you agree with this story, or what's your take on it?
Well, I woke up this morning and read the story with a lot of interest, as a lot of my colleagues did. What I can say with regard to any sort of conversations, discussions between the Pakistani government and the TTP, we've always regarded that as an internal matter for the Pakistani government. So we've got no position on that whatsoever. With regard to any alleged operational strikes, I mean, unfortunately, those not very satisfying. I can only tell you that we can never comment about kind of operational details of something, particularly in an alleged program. But the president has made a real effort to try to better define that program altogether, and he made a significant speech about this last year in terms of noting a desire for more transparency and more accountability in that program. And so generally, I have only that to refer you back to. But we all look forward to seeing what will transpire in Pakistan as a result of any of these efforts at discussions.
A very high-profile delegation from Pakistan, very high-powered as well, just went back to Pakistan. You were also part of that, the whole process,
Yes.
strategic dialogue. It resumed after almost 3 years. In your thinking, or do you recall any mention of these drone strikes, or did they bring this up? And this Washington Post story, is it like a result of those talks, some of those talks? I mean, do you have any idea?
Well, clearly much of those discussions were in private settings, and some in kind of much smaller settings. But there were kind of two key components to the discussions that we had during the strategic dialogue. The first part was very focused on economic and energy issues, trade-related issues. The second part on a range of security issues, including regional security issues. So broadly, I would say, yes, of course, there was a conversation about regional security, about issues related to the Afghan war theater, about counterterrorism issues, about cross-border militancy issues. I can't tell you whether there were specific requests made nor what the answer would be. Obviously, that's part of the conversation. But what is true is that we've had a very robust discussion with Pakistan for many years on counterterrorism and security-related issues, and that will continue, and we look forward to that continuing.
The Pakistanis, basically, they have been very vocal, very public about these requests to the Americans about these drone strikes. They don't like it. They want them to, be stopped right away. But I'm sure, as you said, in private settings, it may have come up, but you don't have any idea that a specific request was made while they were contemplating these talks with the Taliban.
We're just not in a position to comment on anything on private discussions. I mean, that's the whole point of them, and to be able to have that space to continue to talk about things as sensitive as the security relationship and how we move that forward. But it's a very broad and deep relationship, and certainly in the past we've including, I think, when Advisor Aziz, during Secretary Kerry's visit to Islamabad, talked about that request publicly. We clearly hear the request, and I can't say what the nature of the conversation was, but we try to have a very kind of honest and open discussion with the Pakistanis on all issues, particularly on security issues.
Well, staying on the topic, strategic dialogue. I mean, it started after like almost 3 years, and when we know why it stopped. Abbottabad happened, and then afterward. So why, first of all, why did it take so long? While both parties were still engaged, but this process, actually, this strategic dialogue didn't start after all these years. And what happened? Why this time only? I mean, do you think the change of guards in Pakistan contributed to this change of hearts here?
Yeah. Well, I've actually been in this position for a number of years now, and so I've seen the whole arc of this relationship. I was hired by Ambassador Holbrooke in 2009 as his deputy, and when he and Secretary Clinton elevated the strategic dialogue in 2010 to the ministerial level. It had been a dialogue before, but not chaired by the foreign minister and the secretary. And as you know, we did that actually 3 times in the course of 2010, and we had a number of different working groups that were a part of the strategic dialogue on all manner of issues that concern both of us. And then obviously we went through this very turbulent period in 2011 and 2012. The strategic dialogue was never called off. It's just we had not met at a ministerial level, and what we really tried to do in those times that were particularly difficult is focus in on the core issues of most importance to each of us. And so we culled through the various working groups that we had at that point and came up with a list of 5 that were of most critical priority to both of us. One of them, as you just referenced, was on counterterrorism and law enforcement issues, not only cross-border militancy, but things like counter-IEDs. Another one, given Pakistan's really existential energy needs, was on energy very specifically. Another was on economic and finance, given, again, the importance of the trade agenda and other economic issues in Pakistan. And then there was a group focused on the defense relationship and a group focused on kind of strategic stability issues. And so even when our relationship was at some of its lows in 2012, we made this commitment that the work of these groups would continue. And so there was a strategic dialogue process going forward, and we were trying to do the work of the American and the Pakistani people despite all the other issues going on in the relationship. And that was quite successful. Those groups met over the course of 2012, some in 2013. And as we continued both sides very, very assiduously with a lot of hard work to try to get this relationship on firmer footing, we kept pushing the relationship further and further and trying to strengthen it. And we got to a point where last summer, Secretary Kerry went to Islamabad, and reinvigorating the strategic dialogue was a key part of the conversation, and we decided it was important that the ministers meet again at that point. So this strategic dialogue meeting really flowed initially from his trip there. He said when he gave his press briefing with Advisor Aziz that we would try to do this at a ministerial level within the next 6 months. This was almost 6 months to a day, and that before we had the ministerial meeting, we would try to have those same 5 working groups meet again. We were mostly successful. 3 of those met over the course of last fall, and the last 2 will meet over the next few months. But there was definitely a strengthened relationship coming out of that visit, and then very critically, the visit of Prime Minister Sharif to Washington in October really continued to solidify the relationship and ensure that we were having this breadth and depth of conversations on the range of key issues. That was a very successful visit, and this was a natural progression of that. So I think you've seen a gradual rebuilding of this and a reinvigoration and revitalization of the relationship, which really merited meeting at a ministerial level. And as you note, it was a very high-level delegation from Pakistan. It was not only Advisor Aziz, but Minister Asif and a range of other senior officials. And on our side, we had a very, very good plenary session here at the State Department, chaired by Secretary Kerry, and he hosted a lunch afterwards, which included a range of our interagency participants, representatives from the White House, from Department of Energy, from DOD, from the president of OPIC, someone from USAID, kind of everyone that has an equity in our government in this relationship was represented at that room. And then the ministers managed to have a range of other very high-level meetings while they were in Washington, including with the National Security Advisor, Susan Rice at the White House, with the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Staff at the Pentagon, with the Secretary of Energy and the head of USAID. So I think it connotes how serious we take this relationship, how important it is for us to continue to build upon it, and the range of issues that we really have to talk about. And sometimes those are hard conversations, but that's what friends and partners do. And I think it was a very, very constructive set of meetings, and the dialogue I think was very honest and substantive. And we both came away heartened by that and committed to continuing to take this forward in the future.
Well, before I ask you the next question, we'll take a very short break here and then go into a little bit more details about the dialogue. And you also brought up Ambassador Holbrooke.
Yeah.
I'm sure we would like you to share some of those moments with us as well that you spent with him. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Each week here at Cafe DC, I go one-on-one. Politicians, literary giants, activists, power brokers, and many more from different walks of life. And focusing on what matters is my cup of, shall we say, coffee. Matters that make a difference in the society. Watch me, Faiz Rahman, on Cafe DC, every week only on PTV World.
Welcome back. Well, Mr. Feldman, you mentioned Ambassador Holbrooke's name.
Yes.
And Ambassador Holbrooke was a much revered figure in Pakistan as well as here in this country. You spent a lot of time with him. Since his death, there was a feeling, not just here, also in Pakistan, that the profile of his office took a slight dip. It's been kind of a wave when Mark Grossman took over as the ambassador or as in charge of this office. And then again, it's slowly going up when Ambassador Dobbins is here. So first, please share some of those moments with us. You worked very closely with Ambassador Holbrooke, and what do you think of him? How did he help this relationship cement, so well during his times?
Yeah. I did work very closely with Ambassador Holbrooke. I worked with him first in the Clinton administration, and then off and on even when neither of us were back in government. And then he asked me to serve as his deputy in this office, and I learned, obviously, as everyone has, so much from him. He was so passionate and so committed to the U.S.-Pakistan bilateral relationship. He really drove a range of the issues which we're still working on, whether it's the strategic dialogue and seeking to elevate that, whether it was helping to shepherd the Kerry Lugar-Berman assistance, whether it was his efforts at looking for ways to do more on market access, but really convincing everybody, all of the U.S. stakeholders, whether it was members on the Hill, whom he used to talk to very, very frequently within the interagency, and certainly his very, very close relationship with Secretary Clinton, and then working with the White House, on the critical importance of Pakistan in terms of our bilateral relationship, in terms of the role it plays regionally, and making everyone aware of how much we have to gain by strengthening this relationship. So I think we're still very much executing his vision, but he had enormous fondness and affinity for Pakistan and for his partners. He loved not just coming and meeting with his equivalents and members of the government, but he loved sitting down with Pakistanis, whether it was at a school or over a meal, but he always tried to
refugee camps. I mean, he went to the northern
constantly
areas.
went to the refugee camps and would throw off his security detail and go into a tent and sit there and talk with kids, and that's when he most connected.
One more point, he spoke with the media more often. I also interviewed him a few times actually, and
Yes.
he was very, very accessible to the media. So maybe that's something you may want to look at.
He recognized the importance of the public narrative, and he thought it was very important to have all of our private meetings with a range of actors, whether it's government or civil society, but also very important to get to build that narrative in public. So it's something that we all seek to still do, and frankly, there's a real fondness not only for all of those on his team who continue to work on some of these issues, but that his family continues their relationships. His stepdaughter is working in Pakistan now for the World Food Program. His wife is a noted author and activist. I think she'll likely be going to Pakistan quite soon. His sons are very engaged in following what's happening in both Afghanistan and Pakistan. One of them is working on a film about his life, and including obviously the very important Pakistan dimension to it. So there is a legacy there, both a personal and familial one, as well as a professional one. He really shaped in those first year or two of this administration the path and the trajectory that we still are trying to execute. Now, obviously, there were also real shocks to that relationship that happened primarily in 2011, and you referenced some of them, Abbottabad and Salalah and Ray Davis and a kind of range of things. So I wouldn't look at it as something specific to the personality. Certainly, Ambassador Grossman, whom I also served as deputy, and then his successor, Ambassador Dobbins, have the same mandate, the same commitment, and the same energy in terms of trying to address these really critical issues for U.S. national security. But it did align with a period of time when our relationship was going through this this tumultuous period. So, the fact that you may not have seen him as much in Pakistan probably has just as much to do with all the external issues, or almost exclusively to do with the external issues, than what he would have wanted.
Interesting you mentioned those unfortunate incidents as shocks, Salalah, Abbottabad, Ray Davis, but they're like unidirectional. They were from here to Islamabad or Pakistan. Do you see any shocks coming from Pakistan which caused this disruption in the dialogue and in the relationship a little bit?
Well, I don't think it's worth I don't think it's worth being retroactive in our thinking, especially at a point when we're trying to continue to move this forward. Clearly, as both our secretary and Prime Minister Sharif and many others have said, the areas of alignment in our relationship far outweigh the number of areas that we have disagreements on. That doesn't mean that there are no disagreements, and there are going to continue to be issues that we will have to work through and are difficult. And clearly, you've seen here something like the reaction in Congress to Afridi, and the fact that this has become a significant issue with our public, and someone that we all see as doing something quite heroic and in the interests of both the U.S. and Pakistani people, and helping us to get bin Laden at the end of the day. So there are things that color the perceptions on both sides, and what we have to do is try to continue to show why this relationship is so important, and despite all the other things that come up, that we have a continued commitment to strengthening it, and that's what I think we've managed to do over the last few years, and I think we're on a very good trajectory to continue that in the coming years.
You mentioned Shakil Afridi, Dr. Afridi. Is there any convergence of views on him now that you have had this dialogue?
Well, again, I can't go into any specifics of what was in the dialogue, but we've always said that we think the sentence is unwarranted, and we want to make sure that he's safe and released, and we convey very strong messages about our interest in Dr. Afridi at every possibility. But that cannot be the only issue through which the broader bilateral relationship is seen. And so while we certainly respect what the Congress has done on this point, that's their prerogative, and we understand the sentiment behind it, and it's one that we share in terms of recognizing his valor and his value. We also want to make sure that we continue things like our assistance program, which we think is very much in the interest of both of us. And so we have continued to spend billions of dollars over the course of the last few years, even during these very bad periods, even during this period where the relationship was so difficult, and during a relationship when the U.S.'s own financial and budgetary situation was fairly dire, and where we weren't getting a lot of foreign assistance for a range of other kind of top priorities. We've managed to spend over $3 billion now since 2009, since Kerry-Lugar-Berman was passed, on a range of things that we think are in Pakistan's top priorities. So fundamentally, helping to contribute to the energy needs and adding 1,000, 1,200 megawatts to the grid, which benefit 14, 15 million people, on repaving all the key roads and enlarging them between Afghanistan and Pakistan. So if there is a future to regional trade, this helps to facilitate it. On setting up kind of innovative programs like the PPII to encourage investment in small and medium enterprises, on the largest Fulbright program in the world in Pakistan. And there's lots of misperceptions, I think, about Americans in Pakistan. There's many misperceptions about Pakistanis in the U.S. But despite all that, we have managed to kind of move this forward. And I think at the end of the day, there will be a real legacy there, and we have more to grow on, and we want to continue to move this in a relationship in a direction that Pakistan favors, and hence kind of our efforts to see where we can move this in a real market-based relationship. And that was a key part of the discussions at the Strategic Dialogue last week, and will continue to be over the short and long term. And that's why one of the things that we announced at the Strategic Dialogue was a date for the TIFA, the trade talks with our USTR in March, an upcoming date in April for the next law and finance economic and finance working group. And so we're looking at every opportunity to see where we can continue to build this in the areas that the Pakistani people and the Pakistani government are most prioritizing.
Well, we have to just take a very short break. And when we come back, we'll talk to you about this trust deficit between the two nations. I think it was also brought up during one of his speeches here, by Mr. Sartaj Aziz, and you were also there. So stay with us, viewers. We'll be right back.
Each week here at Cafe DC, I go one-on-one. Politicians, literary giants, activists, power brokers, and many more from different walks of life. And focusing on what matters is my cup of, shall we say, coffee. Matters that make a difference in the society. Watch me, Faiz Rahman, on Cafe DC, every week only on PTV World.
Welcome back. Mr. Feldman, you were there at the dinner when Sartaj Aziz, he spoke about the trust. And he was very optimistic about now he thinks there is enough trust between these two nations to go forward on not just on this dialogue, moving on to other greater things in this relationship. Why these two nations have this, and you also mentioned in your previous answer, this love and hate kind of relationship. Why there is still some deficit in trust? What is your personal take? I know before you joined the department, you were a successful lawyer. Now you're a great diplomat. So they're lucky to have two in one. Let's talk about this from both perspectives. What's going on? Why can't they be two very, strong partners in fight against terrorism, against poverty, against economic deprivation? Polio is a big issue in Pakistan. So please.
Yeah. Well, addressing the trust deficit is something that we've both tried to do over the course of my time in the department over the last 4.5 years since the beginning of this administration. And I think that we're making progress on that, but it's not always on a constant uphill trajectory. I mean, as we discussed in terms of the turbulence and the volatility in the relationship in 2011 and 12. I mean, we had made some progress in 2009 and 10, and obviously took a big hit over the course of that time. We're rebuilding it. Nothing is ever going to be as perfect as up. That's not how life is, and that's not how real relationships are. That's not how a personal relationship would be between two people, and that's not how a bilateral relationship would be between two countries. And obviously the nature of our joint interests in Pakistan mean that we have to find ways to continue to build that trust. We have so many common interests for the time being, for the last dozen years, and for the next few years. Obviously, a big piece of that has been the relationship with Afghanistan, but that's not the only reason. We've really tried to put an emphasis on what our core interests are with Pakistan in particular, and it includes the fact that we're the largest market for Pakistan and want to continue to be that, and work to see how we can increase market access. It's on countering violent extremism. It's on the range of other regional issues which Pakistan confronts. I mean, you're not moving out of your neighborhood anytime soon, and obviously we've got interest with regard to Iran, with Afghanistan, with China, with India. I mean, this is a region that there will continue to be a very significant focus on in the decades ahead, and Pakistan is an integral player in that, and we want to make sure that we continue to build that trust. So I think that it's had its fits and starts, but as with any relationship, and I'm glad that over the course of my time I've managed to see it get back to this level, and I think we heard very honest comments from Advisor Aziz when he was here on exactly this point, and we look forward to continuing to grow that, and I think we're on the right path to continue to grow that.
Afghanistan is going through a very monumental, a very important phase in their history, the elections, presidential elections, and they just had a very Americanesque debate, same props and everything. What do you think? What's your take? What's going on, and what the Americans are looking forward to in Afghanistan?
What we've always been supportive of is the process. We want to see the process work. We obviously are not taking any position on any candidate, but we want to see this democratic process continue to play out. And so far, the signs have been very encouraging. You noted this debate that just happened, but the election season kicked off officially just over the weekend. Voter registration continues. The security plans continue to be made, and so there's a lot of work that will continue to need to be done. But the process appears to be working thus far, and we hope that it will continue to do so in the interests of ultimately transparent, credible, and unifying elections that bring together the Afghan people and ultimately help result in a secure and stable and sovereign Afghanistan, because that's ultimately what's best for a secure and stable region.
Segue to this answer. There was a story in New York Times on January 27th about BSA and America leaving behind some troops there, and there were some concerns expressed by the Pakistanis. Some of them, they think that it's more about Pakistan. Leaving troops in Afghanistan is more about Pakistan than Afghanistan, because Americans, they want to monitor the nuclear program and they want to continue to engage with the fight against terror. What's your take on that article?
Well, again, to go back to where I left the last answer, which is our commitment to a secure and stable and sovereign Afghanistan within a secure and stable region, we've always said that to ensure that we've got that stability, we see kind of a continued mission focused on a few core issues, particularly counterterrorism and a kind of a train and advising and assisting role for the ANSF. That's why we think signing a BSA is so important. But frankly, it's not just us. It's the Afghan people, it's the Loya Jirga, and it's really virtually all the neighbors and partners of Afghanistan. So we all recognize that this is what would provide most stability, and hopefully it will be signed. That certainly continues to be the goal, and with that, we will help to cement a more stable region.
Mr. Feldman, pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
This was our show today. Thank you very much for staying with us. Please don't forget to visit our website www.urduvoa.com. See you next week.